Hey DIYers, welcome back. Let me show you 5 simple repairs or upgrades you can do. Don't call that handyman, save yourself some money. Do it yourself. First one we're gonna do is this electrical outlet. Now this didn't look quite so ugly when it first started. Professionals built this house. Professionals did this. Professionals were too lazy to do it right. So basically what it is they took mud compound or drywall compound and mudded around this to make the hole small enough so this fit real nice and easy. The problem was this set recessed. What they did is 2 things. 1, they cut the hole too big, as you can see, and 2, as you're going to see, they didn't compensate for the 5/8 drywall that's back here. Now you might be asking yourself, 5/8 drywall, what do you mean? Between your garage and your house, it's got to have 5/8, what they call 5/8 fire rock. That means the drywall is 5/8 inch thick and it's designed to burn slow, so it gives you more time if there's a fire in your garage before it reaches the interior of your house. Now the interior of your house is all 1/2 inch. So the way they did this plug was designed for 1/2 inch. Apparently they don't do it when it's 5/8, or they're just too lazy to do it, or didn't know, or who knows what. They set this box for 1/2 inch, and I'll show you. Let me take this cover plate off. This particular plate's held on by 2 screws. This has a GFR plug, which means a ground fault interrupter circuit, which means if something gets wet or it trips this and knocks out all the power to the rest of the garage so you don't cause a fire. But typically either you'll have a screw in the center, or like this one, they're at the top and the bottom. It's a standard screwdriver. Undo the screws. Try not to lose the screws in case you want to use this again. Me, I'm probably going to throw it away, but no, you know, I'll keep it just in case. And there, your plug's exposed. Now what you see is they didn't tighten these screws down all the way because my plug was loose in here. And if you can see, the box is set below the sheetrock. Box ought to be setting almost even with your sheetrock. So how do you fix this? This is so simple. I'll show you. So in my case, this wall plate is too small for the hole they put in the sheetrock. Go to your local home center, take this with you, and get an oversized plate. And you'll need this to compare. 1, that it's white. 2, that the one you're getting is bigger than the one you got. They call this, what do they call this? A jumbo. And you need one that's got a hole cut out in the center and screws at the top. That's the first thing you need to get. Next, go down the electrical aisle and get box extenders. I've got 3 different ones here. They're different thicknesses. There's 1/4 inch, it's marked on the back side. 3/8 is the green, and the blue's 1/2 inch. One, I wasn't sure which one of these I'd need. Now say you got a double gang box like this one. Don't worry, they got you covered. Here are 2 box extenders for multiple gang boxes. You can either use 1 or 2, and they're going to be used basically the same way. What I'm going to show you is how to use these. There's no difference between how I'm going to use this and this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go outside and turn the power off to the box so you don't get electrocuted. Next, take a screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, if you got a power driver, take these screws out at the top and bottom. Now be careful, don't lose these because you're going to need them. The extension boxes I'm using don't come with screws. The particular kit comes with screws because this can be extended up to a whole inch. And that's why I'm not using it. I don't need that much. Next, take and pull this out. Next thing you want to do is figure out which of these do you need. In my case, it's this 3/8. You got a hole at the top and the bottom. It's going to match this screw. You see this cutout area? That goes to the inside. You're going to slide this over and it's going to sit in there like that. Your screw is going to go in these holes. Then you just push the box back in. Take the screws you pulled out, get them started in the holes again. Be careful, don't cross thread these. Once you got that in, tighten it up, get them snug. If once you put this 3/8 in, you find that that's too much, you go to the 1/4. If it's not enough, you go to the 1/2 inch. Next, you get your oversized plate, put it on there, and the holes will match up. It comes with new screws. They're a standard screwdriver, and tighten it up. Some people are real anal. They want the screw slots pointing up or sideways. Me, I just want them tight. And there you have it. It's fixed. I'm gonna show you around to this other side, and you're gonna see there's a little gap. It's not because my extender's too thick. It's because when they put the dang box in, they put it in crooked. I can't fix that. Can't fix everything. This looks much nicer. It covers the hole. It's flush. This is flush. It's not loose. Easy repair. Don't call the handyman. Let's move on to the next repair. Okay, our second project's going to be this leaky hose bib here. Now, as you can see, it's leaking up from around the top here, and when I push the handle in and wiggle it, it's loose and it leaks even worse. And the other thing is it leaks around this backflow preventer. Now, some of you may not know what that is. Here in Texas, it's required for all your outside faucets to have what they call a backflow preventer. And basically what it is when you shut your water off, the water can't come back into the system. And actually what happens is, and I'll show you here, is when you turn this off, water sprays out everywhere. It's really the pressure that's in the hose, and mine's leaking around that. We'll get that fixed. Now, 2 things. 1, you could replace the whole faucet, but it's going to take a lot of work if you don't have easy access to the wall cavity. And as you see, inside of my garage is completely sheetrocked. So to replace that, either A, I have to cut a hole in the sheetrock to gain access to do it, or B, try to do it from out here. Now in my case, I have PEX, and maybe maybe, but don't count on it. It gave me enough slack that yes, I could undo this and pull it out, cut it off, put a new one on and get it all back in the wall and be great. But that's a lot of work. And if they didn't give me access, guess what? I got to cut to the inside. Or if yours is copper, or God forbid it's galvanized, and you got to have access. That's a lot of work. We don't want to do that, especially if we don't have to. So let me show you how we're going to fix this without having to tear into the wall. So one fix for it leaking right here would be simply to grab a wrench. If this is too loose, like you see here, I'm twisting that, would be to tighten this up to stop the leak. And that would be one way. You gotta be careful how much you tighten that, and I'll go over that in a minute. But in my case, this is the original faucet with the house. It's about 15 years old. For lack of a better word, just gonna rebuild the inside. How do we go about that? First thing we gotta do is turn the water off. I happen to be lucky, I've got a PEX manifold here. My hose bibs are labeled front and back. Just turn it like that, and that's off. Now that you got the water off, first thing would be, if not lucky in my case where this is loose, is get you some WD-40 or penetrating oil, and I'm gonna spray this nut here, and that'll become obvious in a little bit. And then you want to just spray these threads and let it sit for a little bit, and then come back and we'll take it apart. All right, now that we've let it sit, you can either take a crescent wrench, or in this case, mine's a 7/8. If it's really tight, you want to be sure and hold on to the faucet itself as you loosen it so you don't break it off in the wall. Mine is not that tight, so I'm not to worry. So you just undo this nut all the way. In my case, unscrew the valve. You'll see these threads and pull it out. These threads here, I'll tell you about these in a minute, but they're gonna be important. So to get this backflow preventer off, in this case, it looks like it's riveted in there and there's no way to get it out. Nice thing is on the new one, it's got a set screw that you can take in and out to get it off. What I'm gonna do is drill this out. Now I gotta be careful. I just want to drill this out, not drill through this faucet itself or the threads. Basically, I just grabbed a bit that looked about as fat as that is, and we're gonna drill it out. First, let me put some penetrating oil down in there to loosen them threads up. This stuff's sitting here about 10-15 minutes. Again, being careful, and there we go. I wound up getting into the threads just a little bit. So I told you these threads would be important. That threads into, as you saw, faucet itself. So why are those important? So when you put this back in here and tighten this up, it's gonna cause this to pull up, in which case it's gonna put binding pressure on these threads. If you get it too tight, you won't be able to open this valve, and I'll show you that. When you tighten this up, you want it tight enough that it's not wobbling, doesn't leak, but yet loose enough this spins pretty freely. I'm gonna take this handle off, for one, to show you how to do it, and two, I'm gonna put a new one on just so it looks pretty and new. Take a 10 millimeters, what that nut size is. I need to save this nut, because the new one didn't come with one for some reason. You pull this off, now we can pull this off. And yes, you got this little silver gasket here, which is kind of bent, and I'll flatten that out. And there's a little rubber gasket inside here. Now, I'm just gonna take a little tool here, reach in there, and pull this out. Save this to the side, because we'll need to know that here in a minute. Here's all your valve is. And you got this little screw right here. It's holding this little rubber gasket on. And basically, we'll just take a Phillips screwdriver, undo the screw. Don't lose that screw. And you see how this gasket's mushroomed out like that? It's not supposed to be like that. And I'll show you. And then there's just this inside. So all I did was went to my local home center and got an assortment pack of these gaskets, rubber washers. And you could take each individual one of these down or measure and match up and just get, you know, a couple of them instead of a whole batch. It was easier just to do this. Here's the gasket that goes on the bottom of this. And so basically, I'm just gonna go through and find one that matches in size. I found one that fits down inside here. I didn't have to push it hard. I didn't have to do anything. It just sits right down in there. See how much is sticking above? Let me put the old one in. And you can see this one's been mushroomed out. Now you don't have to do this. This is just me being over the top. But I got some marine grease. Put a little on the threads and then screw it back down in here. Now, very important. When you tighten this up, you just tighten it snug. You don't tighten it hard where it starts to mushroom out this washer. You want it just snug enough to hold it in. It's all you want. I'm just going to take a ball peen hammer and flatten this out. Took it from being a curved washer to a flat washer. Let's find a washer that fits this. The hole in this washer is smaller than what I need. So all I did was get my drill bits out and find one that fits in the hole. And I'm just going to set it on top of a piece of wood. Yep, it's going to fit over there just perfect. Take our flat washer back, put it over it. Like that. I'm gonna put a little bit of this marine grease in these threads. I'm just being OCD. Our new handle's ready to go on. Just reverse what you did. Tighten it back up. Alrighty, everything's just in reverse. Just down in here, screw that back on. And I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a twist and let's test how tight it is. That's pretty good. Remember what I said about those threads? As I tighten this up, it's wanting to pull this up out of there. It's going to cause them threads to bind up. Looks all nice and pretty, almost brand new. One more thing to do. So here's our new backflow preventer. Adjustable nut on there that I can tighten up. It's got a new rubber inside there. Just screw it back on. Put our little set screw in. All right, let's hook a hose up and see how well we did. Let's go turn the water on. All righty, moment of truth. Beautiful. No leaks around the handle. No leaks around the backflow preventer. Works beautifully. Everything's nice and dry. Now I'll show you what a backflow preventer does. You shut this off, relieves the pressure through those little bitty holes. Now see, wasn't that an easy job to do? No handyman needed. 20 minutes, let's say an hour of your time. You got a leak-free faucet. With that, let's move on to our third project. All right, here's our third project. Now any of you that's been with the channel for a little bit might remember this door where I took care of the dents in it, sanded, repainted it, put in the peephole. Well, I want to protect the bottom of the door just a little bit more because you know you've all experienced this where you got your hands full, you kind of get the door open and you kick the bottom of it or you hit the door to open it up. Well, I want to protect the bottom from getting more dents that I already had to fix with this simple door kick plate. This one here says it's oil rubbed bronze. It looks black, but it's got a protective plastic coating on it. Leave that on there. Now, these come in different sizes. This front doors typically are a 36-inch door. Now, these typically come 8 inches wide, so you're going to need to measure from here to here to make sure you have that. I've measured, I've got from the bottom here to here is over 8 inches. From here to here is over 34. This is going to be a simple little project. First thing I'm going to do is get this opened up and get all the parts out of it. It comes with the screws that you need. So here, this is the front of my plate, and here's the back. It's metal, but it's pretty thin. Basically, what I'm going to do is map out where this needs to sit. All right, I got it centered over the hole. It's a 1/2 inch from each side. It's a 1/2 inch from here, 1/2 inch from the bottom. You got blue painter's tape to hold it in place. Next thing we need to do is drill pilot holes. Now, it tells you right on the back with the instructions, you need to pre-drill a 5/64 hole. I actually have a 5/64 self-centering drill bit because you want these in the center. That's all you need to do. I'll finish all the rest of these and show you how we're going to do next. Sorry about that. Forgot to turn the microphone back on. But you see here, I got painter's tape around where the plate goes, and I left about an 1/8 inch gap from where the plate is going to sit and the edge of my outside tape. And I also put tape around the outside edges of the kick plate itself. Now, using clear 100% silicone caulking, I'm putting a small dab of that caulking over each one of the screw holes that are in the door. That way, when I put the screws through the plate into the door, it will seal those holes up so no water gets in behind there and doesn't get inside the door. Then using the same silicone caulk, I'll put a really small continuous bead around the outside edges of the plate and around each screw hole. I'm not putting a large bead because I don't want a bunch of squeeze out when I put the plate back on the door. And again, this will seal it from water getting in behind the door and the plate. Now I'm putting multiple small little beads of that same caulking along the length of the body of the kick plate. I'm doing this so that it'll help adhering to the door and also for water protection. So I've put the plate on and I use the screw holes to line up where it needs to go on the door, and I placed a couple of screws part way in a couple of the holes on the plate to hold it in place. Then I just started putting in the rest of the screws, and I'm only putting them in part way. I'm not tightening up all the way yet, and you'll see why here in a little bit. My particular door is an insulated door, and there's only wood around the edges of the door, so the bottom corner screw holes and the bottom screw holes are the only ones where when I put the screws in, they're going to bite into some wood. Everywhere else, the screws are just being held in by the metal of the door itself because the center of it has got styrofoam in it for the insulation. Now, using what they call a J-roller, which has a rubber wheel on it, I started in the center of the kick plate and using firm pressure started rolling in both directions all over the whole plate until I got the whole thing rolled out. And I'm going over the screw holes also as I'm doing it. And I'm doing this for two reasons. One is to squeeze out and flatten out the caulking so that the door will sit nice and flat against the door. And two, for water protection also to seal it up. Now that I've rolled out the whole door, I can go back and tighten up each one of the screws. Now I had to be careful you don't over tighten these top screws because all it's biting in is metal and I don't want to strip them out. Whereas on the bottom screw holes, I can go a little tighter because they're biting into wood. And I'm doing it by hand because of that reason versus using a drill driver
and tightening them up and risk stripping out the screws. I've got one last caulking detail to do, and that is to put the silicone caulking around the edges of the kick plate. And again, I'm putting just a thin, small bead of caulking on there and then dipping my finger in water to smooth it out, because by dipping it in my finger in water, it gets you a smoother finish and it doesn't stick to your finger as bad. Now we're left with one last thing to do, and that is to remove the protective plastic coating off of the kick plate.
And just like that, our third project's all done. Your door's protected from dents. And if you got some projects you'd like to see me do, put them down in the comments. And if I've missed any important details that you didn't catch, ask me the question down in the comments also. If I'm going too slow for some of you, sorry, trying to make it for everybody. So with that, let's go on to our fourth project. All right, our next project has to do with this door latch. No, it's not replacing the door latch. It's fixing this stripped screw right here. Now, there's a few ways you can go about fixing this. And I'm only going to show you one, but I'll briefly tell you about a couple others. One way you could do it is you take the screw out, you get a block of wood, cut off some slivers, kind of stick them or glue them in the hole, then re-put the screw in. Another way you could do it, if the hole's big enough, is take a golf tee and put it in there. If not, you can whittle the golf tee down, put it in there, glue it, and fix it that way. It just so happens I'm going to do it with a wooden dowel. So let's get started. So the first thing I need to do, obviously, is take the screws out. This one came out pretty easy, but if it's stripped, it might be a little bit difficult to get out. Now, the way I'm doing it, and the other two ways I told you about, it'll work whether it's a strike plate like this, or a hinge in a cabinet, or anything that's wooden, vanity, what have you. The next thing we want to do is drill this hole out. I'm going to get a bit that's just a hair bigger than that hole and drill it out. So I measured the screw with some digital calipers, and it's 5/32. That includes the threads. 3/16 inch thick dowel rod. So I'm gonna use a 3/16 inch bit to drill the hole out. Now I only want to drill a hole as deep as my screw is long. Okay, I don't need to drill all the way through. That's why the tape's on here. Drill the hole out. Now I just took a sharp chisel and cut 2 pieces of dowel rod a little longer than what this hole is deep. And that'll be important here in a second as to why I did it that way. I'm just gonna use some Titebond 3 glue. And why Titebond 3? Because it's rated for exterior, and this is an exterior front door. I probably could have got away with Titebond 2. Not gonna use a lot of glue, I just want a little bit on there. I'm gonna stick it in the hole, take a wet paper towel and just wipe off the excess. I'll give that about an hour to dry, then we'll come back and finish this up. And in the meantime, we'll start on our next project. So our fifth and last project is gonna be to replace this lock set. Not only are we gonna replace this though, we're also gonna rekey it so that the front and back door are keyed the same. Anyhow, let's get started. This is a very simple project. And just so you know, we're gonna be replacing it with this here, which is the exact same that's out front. First thing we're gonna do is take screws out of the strike plate, and they're Phillips screwdrivers. I'm gonna use a power driver here. Now there's 2 Phillips screwdrivers holding on the deadbolt, and they're long screws. There's your center lock. Now we'll just take and push out this, which will have the strike plate all built in. The doorknob, exact same thing. Take the screws out of the strike plate. There's 2 screws holding in the doorknob itself. Same thing, push out the lock set. Now, what you want to take notice of, how that curve is. You see the curved is towards the outside. Important, if you do it the other way around, it screws everything up. So make sure you know that. Let's get our new doorknob out of the package. So here's all your hardware. Here's your instructions and your template, and then everything's screwed onto this cardboard. In this particular case, I'm gonna have to drill a hole for this one because it doesn't have it. Definitely want to save that template. First, we'll get the deadbolt on. All right, we've got our deadbolt here, and you see this curve? That needs to be down. First thing they tell you is put a screwdriver in here and extend this all the way out. What you need is this D hole here in the center of your doorknob. If it's not, then this can twist to do that. In my case, I don't need to. You also take this cover plate and slip it over, button if you will, on the top here and the bottom. That'll latch into that little hole there. Curve down, this in, it's in the center, just like that. Now the one thing I don't like is this screw's only this long, whereas the other ones were longer. If they were silver, I'd use the old ones, but since they're black, I'm not. You just take your strike plate this way or this way, it doesn't matter. Put that over, and I'm just gonna use a screwdriver to put these in. The holes should be the same. If by some chance they're stripped out, go back to the last project and you'll know how to fix that. Now I'm just tightening these up snug. I don't want to over tighten them or it'll strip them. And they should be somewhat smooth and flat with the strike plate. So here's our inside plate. Need this point up. Got a cap that goes over it. In this position, this little part here goes through the D. Now, Your lock side, this here, goes through the bottom underneath here. It's gonna go inside that little opening there. Take these supplied screws here, put them through. Okay, now we got those started. Just take and tighten them up. Deadbolt's done. Now all we gotta do is get the bottom latch, but I gotta get the template. We gotta drill a hole. So if for this part you've already got a hole down here, you can skip all this as long as it lines up with this. Doors come with either a 2 3/8 or a 2 3/4 offset. It has that right on here. Mine's a 2 3/8. This is the center line, and this is what I go by. Now these 3 marks down here is for it to reach between the high and the low end if you already have a hole. I'm gonna drill dead center. And the reason is this here has adjustability. I'm just gonna take what they call an awl, and I'm on my 2 3/8. You go to the 9 1/8 mark is what it tells you to do, and I'm just going to put this right there and make a dimple. Now I can take this template off. Hardest part here is to drill straight. It tells you to drill a 7/16 inch hole, but you don't need that big a hole. I did that on the front door and it's way too big. This has plenty of slop. This is a 1/4 inch, so I'm doing a 5/16 inch hole. Mine's an insulated door, that's styrofoam. Remember I said keep note of how this slant is? It goes towards the door, and it says that in the direction. So basically we're gonna just put this in here like that, take the supplied screws they gave us and put it in. Now, if for some reason these plates don't sit flat enough, you just take a little chisel and chisel a little bit out. This next part's easy. Here's your handle. It's gonna go on the outside, obviously. And here's your inside handle. It comes with a little set screw in there, and they give you an Allen wrench. It actually comes together. Take that apart so that you can get to these screws without scratching it up. And the handle is gonna go in towards the door, not out towards the door. I'm gonna put this bottom part into the hole first, and then just match up the inside. This has got a half moon shape to it. Goes in that half moon hole. Now for the bottom, comes with a long screw and a washer. That holds the door in while I get everything else put together. This half moon piece here will slide right into there. Now we'll take this supplied Allen wrench, the knob on, and tighten it up. So it comes with a little cover plate, and at one end it's got a little slot. Put that at the bottom, slide that over. The only thing we've got to do is change out these strike plates. This part's real simple, Phillips screwdriver. Now the replacement screws for this are longer, and that's okay on the front door because it's got a wooden jamb, but I'm gonna have to test and see if that works here. It's got a different setup here. Yeah, these will work because they screwed into it. All right, let's test out the latch. Works beautifully. This top one we may not be able to use. Reason is it's the same kind of strike plate as down here, but what goes in there for a deadbolt is this, and it's not gonna work. All right, let's shut it and try out the deadbolt lock. That shuts nice. That fits in there. All right, last thing we gotta do is rekey. Very, very, very simple. So we put it in lock, turn the key 90 degrees clockwise, and that little hole you see right there, just a little key tool in there and push it in. Pull this out, pull the old key out, put the new key that you want it keyed to in, and turn. It has successfully been rekeyed. Key that come with it, the original key in it, doesn't work. So this project's done. Let's go back to the 4th project and finish that up. So we've given this plenty of time. Now we're just gonna take a little chisel and chisel off the excess. I put the cover plate back over it, taking a 5/64 self-centering drill bit, drilling a new hole, Phillips screwdriver, set the screw. And just like that, your strip screw hole is fixed. Now wasn't that 5 simple, easy DIY projects you could do? No handyman needed. Save the money for yourself. For some other DIY fixes you'd like to see me do, put it in the comments down below. Just remember, if you built it, repaired it, it's DIY test. Till next time, happy DIYing.